Okay. So the class is being recorded as usual, and this is A230A summer, and we're doing Frankenstein. So Frankenstein happens to be the last what piece of work, and it is also a romantic piece of work, and it might be surprising that you have a novel and we refer to it as romantic because we're so used to the fact that that whenever we mention the romantics, we talk about poetry. So obviously this is not true because when I talk about romanticism, I talk about a vast terrain that starts with poetry but does not end there. You still have, even in politics, you have romantic ideals and ideas. So in literature, you have poetry, you have novels. Again, we need to not to mix between the word romantic as an adjective when you perhaps describe and qualify romantic relationships and romantic poets and romantic novels where it's deeper than that. So you're talking about whatever is strange, whatever is weird, whatever is natural and instinctive, and all of these things. Frankenstein would fall under the category of the weird and the strange and the wild and the quest for whatever is wild. And whatever is wild is obviously, um, associated with the imagination. So this is what Frankenstein is all about. It is an example of how far the imagination can go in, you know, and picturing and portraying worlds beyond the existing world, um, featuring and portraying and picturing people beyond normal people. And this is what we're seeing in the character of the creature. So this is what we're talking about. We started Frankenstein last time, and I don't know whether I have shared the video, the recording or not. But I remember that I asked you to kind of go and do some research, and research would mean that you either read the novel or you watch the novel filmed or even a summary. So have you done any of that?
Yes, doctor.
Yes, doctor.
Okay, good. Let me see how many hands we have. If you have read the novel, if you have watched a movie on or about the novel, if you have done a summary, raise your hands. So we have Joyce, we have Noor, Ibrahim, Zainab, Sana. That's lovely, Montez. Okay. So, Sana, how much do you know about Frankenstein? Who is Frankenstein? Is Frankenstein the
This is
creature?
imagined novel.
Hmm. Imagined novel? Yes, it is. Um, so did you read it or did you watch it in a movie or what, Sana?
I watch in YouTube the summary of
A summary
Frankenstein.
of it.
Yes.
Nice. Good. Did you like it?
Yes.
Okay. Was it scary? Did you feel scared?
Um,
Not really?
but parts scary,
Uh,
but
yeah.
other
Mm-hmm.
parts
Mm.
romantic
Oh,
sometimes.
mm. Yeah, romantic, obviously, in a romantic sense, which means that we're not talking about love relationships, obviously. Romantic in the sense that you have this sense of the wild
Emotional.
and the strange. Okay. Okay, nice. Who else? Let's move all the way to Ibrahim. Did you watch a movie
Yeah,
or
yeah.
did you read
It
the novel?
No, I read a
Yeah.
summary. It's a
Mm,
Gothic literature
mm-hmm,
based on science fiction story, and I read
mm-hmm.
that. Mary Shelley is the first one who come up with the idea of science fiction, and all the movies and books and fiction books come after that. It's come from after the Mary Shelley. Shelley invented the science fiction based on this story.
Okay, that's interesting. Actually,
Yeah,
she's not the first one, but she is among the first ones. She is
yeah,
a
the
pioneer,
fathers.
but yeah, but she is not. There were people, obviously, and attempts before her. Thank you,
Yeah,
Ibrahim.
thank you.
Um, Joyce, what do you have to say about the novel?
I read it like a few years ago, but I
Mm,
watched the summary and a
mm,
movie like also a few months ago. But the summary, I watched it on YouTube, the whole thing, and I read the
mm,
plot again. But yeah, it's really an
nice.
interesting one. Yeah,
Mm,
with all the details and the stuff and the creature. And to be honest, I felt sad for the creature
mm,
because like it's not his fault. He was created.
uh,
Yeah,
mm,
exactly. And he abandoned him, like Frankenstein abandoned the creature he created. So
mm,
like I felt like he's like a an orphan kid who
yeah.
didn't have anyone to look after, you know?
Yes. Yeah. He didn't choose to look the way he did. He
Mhm.
didn't choose to um, you know, to live the kind of life that he led. He was abandoned from day one, and I don't know. Yeah, perhaps that was one big reason why he had to go out of his way and learn stuff, and to depend on himself. Um, yeah, so it's a very interesting piece of work. Uh, and yeah, we stand to learn a lot from it. Zainab wants to say something. Zainab Bawazir, you're raising your hand, yeah, Zainab. Okay, obviously you forgot it raised from last time. That's fine, yeah, Zainab. Okay, so let's move all the way to the book and see what is waiting. So it's Frankenstein, everyone. And like I said, Frankenstein is not the name of the creature, like everybody believes. It's the name of the inventor and the creator of the creature. Okay, the creature himself doesn't have a name for obvious reasons. Okay, so these are some of the aims. We're going to talk about the different genres that contribute to Frankenstein, the novel. Going to also try to detect and identify romantic characteristics in the text. And then we talk about the narrative, the fact that we have a series of first person narratives. Again, it's not only one person monopolizing the narrative, it's three. And obviously, that would point to the multifaceted nature of truth. So there is obviously more to truth than just one angle of vision. This is something that we are going to take away from the novel. You don't judge things based on one point of view or one angle of vision. You need to, if you have to judge, if you have to come up with conclusions, you have to kind of listen to the different parties. You need to look at things in and out so that you can have a very clear image of what is happening before you decide. And this is perhaps one of the things that we're going to take away from this novel. Um, okay, so It's a novel that was written in 1818. Actually, it was published in 1818, and the inspiration came when Mary Shelley, the writer, was part of a competition, a friendly competition. A group of people um, are sitting together. It's obviously a holiday, and in order to while away their time, they thought of playing a game. And because they are talented, they thought of having this game of writing. So they said that um, one of them, or perhaps the three or the four of them, will come up with ghost stories, and they are going to vote for the best. So Mary Shelley came up with one, and it's Frankenstein that we're reading and that we're studying. Again, you would ask why or what Mary Shelley thinks of her piece of work. When she was asked, she said that she had a number of aims and objectives. She said that her intention was to write a story that would speak to the mysterious fears of our nature and awaken thrilling horror. So obviously, when you have a writer talking about those wild feelings and emotions, we're talking about horror, and horror after Mary Shelley became a genre in and of itself. So we now have horror movies, we have horror novels, where watching them would um, have your hair stand on end out of fear, out of um, sometimes out of pleasure, which is very strange. And this is also very weird that you may find pleasure in seeing blood spilled, in seeing violence, in seeing people killing each other. So this is the realm of the horror, and the horror movies and horror novels are all over the place now. So again, when she was asked why she wrote the novel, or what is it that she was trying to achieve, she said that she wanted the reader to dread, to look around. Dread means to be uh, afraid and to think twice and be scared of even looking around. She wanted to curdle the blood and quicken the beatings of the heart. She's very bloody and very violent. And this is what popular culture is all about, or part of it, to be fair, is about whatever is occult, whatever is horrific, whatever is strange. And let me ask you, do you enjoy horror movies and horror novels? Are you into this?
Definitely. Definitely, doctor.
Yeah,
You
sometimes.
mean
Yeah, doctor.
definitely not? Yeah, Joyce?
No, no, no. I enjoy it to the max.
Yeah, yeah, this is very violent. I don't know, Mama. That's very. I don't know. I don't have an explanation. Um, I don't know. Why would people feel that kind of happiness in seeing, like I said, blood being spilled,
It's not about the
killing,
blood, doctor,
Doc-
it's about
slaughter.
the movie itself.
Doctor,
Uh, yeah,
because yes,
let's
go ahead.
have let's if it's a debate that we're engaged in, let's give
Yeah, yeah.
people the opportunity, and then let's take one at a time. Okay, Joyce.
Yeah, doctor,
Um,
it's not
mm,
about the happiness. Of course not. No one would enjoy, like, the scenes of blood and the gore and
mm,
stuff like that.
mm,
It's
mm.
about the plot. It's about the whole thing together. Like sometimes there are some scary movies that are really like not scary at all, and they're very silly. But
Mm-mm.
sometimes the directors actually do a really great job in making the effects and the movie and the plot and the characters like very realistic that you can actually feel this. So this is
Mm.
really, it's about the experience itself. It's not about, the blood
Mm.
scene and everything.
Yeah, sometimes you may be, right if it is normally associated with some kind of detection where you're detecting who the culprit is, who the serial killer is. So in this case, you would also have to, the movie has to engage your mind, your intellect, in order to, kind of come up with who did what. So this is perhaps what makes it perhaps more justified or reasonable. Otherwise, if it's horror for its own sake, I don't know. I'm not into this kind of movies anyway. Whether they have a twist, whether they have a rational twist, whether the horror is there for a purpose or for a dramatic reason. I don't know. I don't like
Victor, can I add
anything.
something?
Yes, yeah, Ibrahim.
From psychological perspective, I read a book called Make Killing. The book is the writer illustrated some instinct nature of the human being, and one of this factor is that human being like the violence. For instance, when you say cute baby, small baby, you want to bite him in the cheek or something. That's kind of our nature, because when we turn our excitement to violence. Yeah, that's part of what the book says. You mean, if
Yeah,
you
this
agree on
is
that or
only a
not?
theory. Yeah, I think this is a theory, then you can prove it or you can challenge it, right? So to have those sweeping conclusions about human nature and say that we're violent by nature, we're evil by nature, this is very debatable, obviously. But there is something in human nature, in human beings, that savor violence. And I'm not saying that everybody savor and likes violence, but we have large sectors of society who like it. I mean, for all the kinds of, for all the right and the wrong reasons, like they say. Mary Shelley's Frankenstein would fall under this category. It's a novel where obviously um, the violence stems not because the characters are engaged in violent actions all the time, slaughtering and killing. No, it's the violence happens, or the horror. I wouldn't say violence. It doesn't have violence until the creature is pushed to commit a number of violent actions. Other than that, the horror comes from seeing this disformed and disfigured creature. A creature who, at a minimum, looks like a human being, but disfigured and uh, disformed, as we're going to see. So again, this is what Mary Shelley is trying to say. She's saying that she wants to perhaps discuss and address those fears and those feelings of horror, and perhaps why we're having those feelings and stuff. Again, what happened after is that her novel became part of our popular culture, and lots of movies were adapted, uh, I mean, the book was adapted to the cinema, and it became a smash hit on a number of times, and we have so many versions, and people are still building on that. The inspiration is there. We even have a novel by an Iraqi writer, whose name I don't recall right now. And it is also based on Frankenstein, the novel of Mary Shelley. And I advise you to go to perhaps Goodreads and write Frankenstein in Arabic, and you'll get the name of the author and the name of the novel in Arabic. But perhaps if you have time, you can read it, and then you start to make comparisons between Mary Shelley's Frankenstein and this Iraqi author's Frankenstein. Okay, so so are we saying that it's whole a thriller kind of thing that is meant to perhaps um, entertain people in a weird way? It's something that they can while away their time using it. No, actually, there is more to the novel than just that. So to say that it's only a spine-chilling thriller, and it's not very valuable in terms of artistic and literary quality, that wouldn't be very unfair to Mary Shelley. The novel is complex, and it addresses very important questions about education, question about responsibility, people taking responsibility for their own actions or the lack thereof. So to simply say, or to only say that this is a thriller, or this is a horror story and a ghost story, would be um, wouldn't be very accurate, because there is obviously more to it than just that. It has, and it shows that Mary Shelley is a socially committed writer. She is engaged in the issues of her time. And part of the debates and conversations that she contributed to was the idea of education and the idea of responsibility and all of these kinds of things. So this is Mary Shelley. And of course, you know that Mary Shelley is the wife of Shelley, the very famous second generation romantic poet, whom we can study, but perhaps as extra material, which means that we're not being tested on it. So when we talk about Frankenstein, the novel as a genre, we're going to say, or we're going to see that it would fall under so many categories. So it can be so many things. It can be Gothic, it can be epistolary, it can be science fiction, it can be fairy tale. So you see how many genres I have included. Can be a romance. So it is not, or it can't be easily categorized. So it has Gothic qualities, it has romantic qualities. It is part of the tradition of the epistolary novel. You know what epistolary novels are, right? So those are novels that are based on the idea of letter exchange. People are exchanging letters, and out of those letters, we get to know more about the characters and the plot and everything in between. So again, we're stressing the fact that um, Frankenstein has a multiple, or it can be, or it can go under a multiple genres. Like I said, it can be Gothic, um, it can be romantic, it can be part of the traditions of the epistolary novel, can be science fiction, can be even a fairy tale. People speak about the idea itself. The idea is to assemble a human being. You have body parts, you put them together, and you try to inject life into them using electricity. And this is, of course, a very fantastic idea. And obviously, it didn't succeed. We don't have that. What we have now is robots. You create, uh, you don't have to uh, have the parts of a human being. You can simply create, things made of material, and then you put them together, and then you have, a machine that does things for you. So again, the idea is very fantastic. And by fantastic, I'm not saying that it is great. Fantastic here comes from the word fantasy, which means out of the realm of possibility, something that you have to suspend your disbelief for if you want to believe it. Um, so this is the creature in one of the cinematic versions, and obviously he doesn't look um, very human. I mean, the fact that things are obviously out of proportion, and obviously that would scare people off. The creature would stop and think why people are treating me the way they do. Um, and again, that would also take us to the idea of who did this and why, and whether there was miscalculations involved, and whether this is this if science is wrong-headed, so this is the result that we're getting, and this is in the age and time of AI. I think it's very scary. You can feed um, what you can feed AI with anything, and then the result can be very catastrophic. And I'm talking about AI in its largest and biggest sense. I'm not talking about perhaps asking ChatGPT to write an essay for you. It's bigger than that. And it's going to go beyond these petty things. We're talking about nuclear weapons. We're talking about um, it's bigger than just that. So again, this is the creature, and obviously he's not responsible for how he looks like. And obviously, this is what of one of the messages that perhaps Mary Shelley is trying to deliver. She wants to say that people are not always um, to blame for mistakes that they never made. Again, this is a very thorny issue because we see it. I mean, the idea of bullying. Bullying is based on the idea of looking at and searching for imperfections in human beings, and then you start to highlight them and exaggerate them. And obviously, nobody is perfect. That's why all of us are subject to bullying, starting with names, body shapes, skin color, and you name it, of course. Um, okay, so we spoke about the idea of narrative, and we said, of course, you know what narrative means. When I say narrative, I mean uh, um, who tells the story and from what perspective. So whether it's first person narrative or third person narrative. So what we're having here is um, actually a multiplicity of narratives or competing narratives, if you like. And the people involved in those narratives um, are telling us the self same story, but from different perspectives. And again, this may be a strategy through which Mary Shelley is trying to tell us that people should adopt a more tolerant attitude towards truth. Truth cannot be sought in one single way. You can have an event and it can be interpreted from three different perspectives, which means that truth is no longer absolute. Your truth can be my falsehood and the other way around. So it's about um, not that truth is not absolute because it has to be absolute. And when I talk about honesty, honesty is absolute. Obviously, when I talk about integrity, this is absolute. I'm talking about situations where those qualities and those values are tested under certain very special circumstances, and then we decide what kind of or what angle of vision we look at those things. And so Frankenstein has three first-person narrators. We're used to only having one single narrator, and obviously the single narrator, keeps us under his or her control and perhaps holds us hostage to his point of view, whether he is first person or third person. This time around, we don't have one single narrator. We have three narrators. We have three first person narrators. And who are they? They are Robert Walton, they are Victor Frankenstein, and they are the creature. So these are the three first person narrators that we have. And again, I'm stressing the fact that they are going to narrate the self same events, but each one is going to give us his perspective. He's going to look at things from his own lens and his own prism. Um, so how does it go? You normally have somebody who introduces the narrative but is not part of it. So this is what we call the frame narrator. So a frame narrator is not a character. He is the one who introduces the whole story. And then he gives the narrative to characters who are engaged and involved in the events. So the frame narrator here would be Walton. So he has no part in the main action of the novel. He simply hears Frankenstein's story, gets deeply affected, and retells it. So how does Walton do that? It's through a series of letters that he sends and receives from his sister Margaret in London. He is headed uh, to or for the North Pole, and he is sending letters to his sister. In one of the encounters, he's going to meet Frankenstein, the scientist, and Frankenstein is going to tell him his story and how he invented and created the creature and how it was a disaster. That's why he ran away. So Walton is going to be affected by what Frankenstein is saying, and is going to decide that Frankenstein is no culprit, is actually a victim, not uh, the one to blame for what happened. So obviously, Frankenstein is going to change his mind. I'm sorry, Walton is going to perhaps reconsider what he thought when he hear the story from the perspective of the creature. So again, the idea of having those letters exchanged between Walton and his sister Margaret would open up the story for us. Um, what is interesting about frame narratives is that they start novels and they also end them. And this is actually what happened with Walton. He started the novel through those letters, and he tells in one of them he's going to tell his sister about the story of Frankenstein and his creature, and he's going to also end the novel. So the novel opens with Walton's series of letters written to his sister Margaret in London while he is bound for the North Pole. And also his voice concludes the narrative. It is Walton who witnesses Frankenstein's death and who has the last glimpse of the creature. So, what are his thoughts at the beginning about Frankenstein? He first of all, how did he meet Frankenstein? Frankenstein he was kind of um, like we said, he was running away, and obviously he went to so many places, and he met Walton. So Walton rescued or saved him from drifting on an ice floe. Frankenstein was, of course, very exhausted and helpless. And Walton listened to him, and he came up with the conclusion yet that Frankenstein is good. Frankenstein is not to blame. Um, um, and then after a while, we will have the creature's account, and it is relayed through Frankenstein and from Frankenstein to Walton. So as you can see, you don't have a center, um, but we can simply say that the creature's story is the emotive from emotion, the emotive heart of the novel. It is the real center of the novel. It's this part about the creature and what he had to go through. So it's about the creature and his story.
Sorry,
It's about,
doctor.
yeah, yes.
I want to clarify something. Frankenstein, the guy who made the creature, or Frankenstein is the creator himself?
Yeah, Frankenstein is the creator, the one who created the creature. The creature doesn't have a name. The monster
Uh-huh.
doesn't have a name.
Yeah. Okay.
Uh, okay, so and then we go on. And like we said, at the core of the novel, you have this heart-wrenching story of the creature himself. Um, so again, when we say that we have a frame narrator who introduces the narrative, and then you have Frankenstein speaking and narrating the story, and then speaking or narrating this part about the creature. Obviously, we have this device or technique that we say narratives within narratives, and this is a characteristic of the Gothic novel. Um, Again, what is so interesting about this narrative within narrative kind of thing, we have this idea that it is discontinuous and involuted, perhaps incorporating tales within tales. changes of narrators and such framing devices as found manuscripts and interpolated histories. And this is all happening in the novel. So that's why we say that it is, or it can be a Gothic novel. Again, by virtue of having those narratives within narratives, things, and within them, like we said, you have tales and you have narrators that change, and you also have framing devices like manuscripts and interpolated histories. And of course, we have examples when we talk about the kind of educations that the three got, um, and we look at the different experiences that they go through, especially the experience of the creature and how he came to life. Again, despite all the differences, they come together, their histories come together, um, and we get to know more about them through the letters and everything. So this complex mix of narrative voices sometimes works primarily to provide necessary information, but much more importantly, the competing voices demonstrate the difficulty, if not impossibilities, of making moral judgment. This is obviously the biggest takeaway from the novel. The fact that we have competing voices, and obviously they are talking about the self-same events, and of course, everyone is giving the story or the event from his own perspective. And again, if anything, um, perhaps Mary Shelley is trying to say that we cannot make moral judgments, um, because obviously, um, sometimes truth is not absolute. Sometimes you cannot really get to know who is on the right and who is on the wrong. The bottom line would be that people have to be patient when they make moral judgments. They should give people the benefit of the doubt, and this is very important. And this is the trap that Walton fell into. The first one, uh, of course, he met Frankenstein, and he listened to Frankenstein, and he came up with conclusions about the whole scenario, and he said immediately that Frankenstein is good and Frankenstein is not to blame for anything. And obviously, the blame would go all the way to the creature. Over time, when the creature tells his story, um, um, Bolton is going to start to change his opinion. He's going to learn the lesson that he has to be patient, and he has to also give people the benefit of the doubt and listen hard to what everybody is saying. So there is no authoritative or omniscient narrator here to guide readers to an understanding of who or what is right. Readers must weigh the evidence and judge for themselves. This is actually one of the hidden messages, that you have to be patient with the truth, that you need to not to make those moral judgments based on a very limited angle of vision. Um, Here, as you can see, we have some kind of analysis of some of the letters that Walton sends to his sister. And again, through those letters, we get to know about um, Walton and how he thinks of, um, you know, of Frankenstein and what happened. And obviously, he holds or he keeps Frankenstein in. I mean, he admires him so much, and he believes that he is not to blame for any wrongdoing. So, for example, in letter one to his sister at home, the letter demonstrates what a dangerous quest Walton is engaged in. So, Walton is on a quest. He wants to go to the North Pole in order to um, volunteer in some kind of work that would help humanity. Obviously, his ideas are also very theoretical, and if anything, it tells you that he is out of touch with reality, which is more or less a variation on the character of Frankenstein. So their starting point is not reality. Otherwise, they wouldn't have committed the errors and mistakes that they did. And here you have talk about the North Pole and how beautiful it is. According to Walton, it is a region of beauty and delight, a region of perpetual splendor, a land surpassing in wonders and in beauty every region hitherto discovered on the habitable globe. Obviously, when you look at those descriptions, you would believe beyond the shadow of doubt that Walton is a romantic individual himself. According to him, the North Pole is a place of eternal light. Um, Again, the idea that he goes there in order to not to work but to discover things and explore things would tell you a great deal about what kind of character he is, theoretical, and what kind of education he received. So what does he want to do? He wants to confer on all mankind to the last generation uh, um, by discovering a passage near the pole to those countries to reach, which at present so many months are requisite, or by ascertaining the secret of the magnet, which, if at all possible, can only be effected by an undertaking such. You know, every time I read this part, um, the character of Dr. Faustus is invoked. I keep thinking about because he was also fantastic in his demands. He wanted to, to give his patients immortality. He wanted to cure people from all kinds of terminal diseases. And obviously, these are very fantastic ideas. So Walton is like this. He is also a romantic. So he is this dreamy adventurer that we're so used to with the romantics. A man of the imagination. He is predisposed to the sympathetic to be sympathetic to Frankenstein's. So again, the reason or the big reason why he feels very sympathetic towards Frankenstein is that they are alike. They are very similar. And then Walton goes on in his letters, and through the letters that he sends to his sister, we get to know about him and what kind of education, if any, he received. We get to know, for example, that his education was neglected, but he was passionately fond of reading. Um, so he wanted he went on this expedition because this is the fulfillment of a dream that he had when he was a child. And obviously, this was against the wishes of his dying father. So he is primarily self-taught. He taught himself. He didn't go to school or university. And obviously, this can be good and it can also be bad, as we're going to see. The trick about self education is, at least in the novel, is if you have um, an idea and this idea is either obsolete, no longer valid, or even toxic. If you are in a school or university and you share the idea with people, you're going to have people stopping you and say, this is perhaps um, the idea is no longer valid, it has been disputed and challenged by science, so you don't go ahead and implement it. Um, so this is the trick that we're seeing with both Walton and also Frankenstein. Frankenstein himself was not given the opportunity to receive formal schooling. Um, that's why he didn't find people who can stop him and say that your theories are outdated. Nobody's using them anymore. So nobody stopped him. So he went ahead and built the character of the creature based on those uh, um, useless series. Okay, so Walton is very similar. He's ambitious, he's determined, he's adventurous and passionate. He also has this emotional isolation, and he is sorely in need of a friend. These are qualities that you're going to also find in Frankenstein. And these are qualities that you're going to find uh, um, um, as characteristics of romantic temperaments. So, so far, we're seeing the character and we're hearing the voice of Frankenstein through Walton and through Walton's admiring eyes. And he refers very admiringly to Frankenstein as gentle, wise, cultivated. He says that he speaks with unparalleled eloquence, but he also tells us that Frankenstein is in deep grief and that he feels sympathy and compassion for him. So again, this is good. I mean, to feel, some kind of, to feel empathetic and sympathetic towards somebody is something good. But obviously, you shouldn't stop there. You need to think. You need to, if this somebody, this one that you're sympathetic towards is telling you a story, you don't wholeheartedly believe what he or she says. You need to do your own research. You need to assess the situation before you adopt those guys' viewpoint, because it can be unfair if other people are involved. So as you can see, this kind of introduction predisposes readers' sympathy. We trust Walton as a man of sensibility and discrimination. So if he trusts Frankenstein, we trust Frankenstein too. Um, Again, the tricky thing is that when the creature takes over in volume 2, we will find our sympathy shifting from Frankenstein to the creature. We will get to know uh, um, how the creature was abandoned and how he was left to fend for himself, deliberately challenging and unsettling our sympathies. We get to know that Frankenstein is a fugitive and he was running away from his responsibilities. So he didn't shape up. He created the creature when he saw the failure of his creation, instead of perhaps staying and taking responsibility for what he did and perhaps think of repairing and fixing it, he ran away. So Frankenstein irresponsibly and willfully abandons the child he has created, leaving it alone and unprotected. So obviously, Walton was deceived. He didn't think about these things. Um, and perhaps Walton has some excuse in that, because when he met Frankenstein, Frankenstein was older and wiser and perhaps much sadder. And then we come to a very important aspect and a very important idea in the novel, which is the idea of education and what kind of education the different characters received and which of those kinds of education is the best. So the three characters received different types of education. You have Walton. Remember, we said that he is self-taught, which is not a very good thing at times. And then you have Frankenstein telling us about what kind of education he received and the fact that perhaps the reason why his experiment failed and he had this disfigured creature is that he was reading old books and he is using old theories. So again, why? Because he was not directed. At one point, his father saw him reading a book, and um, instead of directing him and talking about the book, the merits and dismerits, he simply said, "What you're reading is sad trash." And he stopped there. So, what happened is that Frankenstein didn't think about what his father said, because his father didn't kind of sit with him and explain why he believes that the book that Frankenstein was reading is sad trash. So again, that would tell you about the attitudes of fathers and parents towards their kids when it comes to you don't receive education at school and full stop. You also get educated at home. So people and parents should walk on eggshells when it comes to what to say and what not to say to their kids. So this is the first bad experience that Frankenstein had with his father. So again, instead of having a father who is understanding, who is ready to take or to make the time for his son and explain why he thinks this book is good and why the other one is not. And instead of having that, we have perhaps a father who doesn't have a sense of responsibility in this aspect. He commented on the book, and that was it. So if it's a passing comment, obviously you don't take it very seriously. And this is what Frankenstein did. He didn't take the the comments very seriously. So this is the situation that I am telling you about, and I would like you to read. So read the following passage, which forms part of a longer explanation of vectors. By the way, Frankenstein is called Vector Frankenstein. So Vector Frankenstein is Frankenstein. So it's so which forms part of a longer explanation of Victor's education. Why is it essential for understanding of his later actions? So I would like you to read this part. Let me make it smaller. I think you can read it now. I'll read it and tell me what you have understood. Okay. You don't have to understand every single thing, but at least the idea is. So what's happening? So what is the theme of this passage? What is it about? Hmm. What do you think?
I think he believes that his father should have spent more time explaining the reason why the book wasn't good for him and the
Yeah,
reasoning behind it instead of just
yeah,
dismissing it.
yeah. So this is an aspect, or this is part of it. And then when we move on, there is also talk about what kind of education Victor Frankenstein received at a later stage in his life. The idea that it was, for the most part, homeschooling, I think, and then when he went to the University of Geneva, or perhaps he didn't go anywhere, he didn't have an opportunity like normal human beings to share his ideas with other people. Because if you share ideas and some of those ideas are obsolete and out outdated, somebody may tell you this and perhaps makes you think, and you would change direction. But he didn't have this because his education was for the most part individualistic. So nobody listened to what he had to say. And he went ahead with those theories, and um, he created the creature based on them. And of course, we know what happened, right? Did you get that from the passage, or am I perhaps referring to other parts of the novel?
No, he does. Yeah, he is isolated, so it
Mm,
affects his psychology as well.
yes. So this is a kind of education that we wouldn't recommend for anyone. We wouldn't like our kids, for example, to go through. First of all, if they read something, we need to kind of, in a, of course, a nice way to engage with them about the book, and perhaps we know better. We can tell them, yeah, this is, yeah, and especially if we talk about scientific theories and all those kinds of, this is perhaps outdated. This is trendy. You need to read in this direction, and you give recommendations, right? And then this is part of the education. Like I said, education does not happen at home and full stop, and it doesn't happen at school and full stop. So you give some education to your kids, and also you leave part of the responsibility for the school. So school alone wouldn't work, and home alone wouldn't work either. So this is the combination that perhaps Mary Shelley is trying to promote. So again, you have seen Walton, primarily self-taught, and obviously we know who Walton is. He is very fantastic, very adventurous. He wants to do things for humanity. He goes all the way to the North Pole to prove his point and to help humanity. Obviously, this is a romantic kind of personality, which is obviously out of touch with reality. And this is not good, right? On the other hand, and perhaps along the same lines, you have the education that Victor Frankenstein received. Again, we start off with those encounters with his father, where his father is not, keen on kind of engaging in this, um, you know, debate with his son about what is good and what is not. And then again, the idea that, um, education was primarily homeschooling, with very few encounters with other people who can either validate you and your theories or prove them wrong and false. Um, so obviously we're talking the subject of discussion, if I can call it discussion, between the father and the son was about a 15th century scientist by the name of Cornelius Agrippa. Um, and obviously this guy and his theories are outdated. So it's not whether he is outdated or not. It's about how you tell people that he is out. So it's the how rather than the what. We don't have obviously a problem with the what because we can discover and we can do research. It's about how you can convey to people that this is good and this is bad. So the key point in this passage is that their ideas had long been superseded by a modern system of science and modern discoveries. Obviously, Victor is ignorant of those discoveries because, again, he wasn't told, he wasn't advised. So his education has been in isolation, primarily and mostly at home, and he hasn't attended any of the lectures given at the schools of Geneva. And again, why that would have made a difference? Because if he had attended any of that, he would have been informed of new developments, and that may have encouraged him to apply himself to the more rational theory of chemistry. Again, we're referring to how dismissive his father is of his enthusiasm. Uh, um, and he simply said that Agrippa is trash, and I full stop. Again, what is so dangerous about that is that this very brief comment that Agrippa is sad trash would leave Victor open to the powers of his imagination, and his dreams were therefore undisturbed by reality. No reality check. Nobody tells him that what you're doing is um, can only be the stuff of dreams. So he was left to pursue his studies alone. Obviously, this is going to go against those who firmly believe in homeschooling, because this is now a trend. Lots of people are, I don't know where they find the time and the power to, to do homeschooling, but it's a trend that and it exists. So he believes then that dreams and imagination pursued in isolation and ignorance led to his disastrous discovery. Uh, so this is basically about what kind of education Victor and the other guy received. And then we come to the education of the creature himself. And this is something we're going to get later in the novel. Here we have talk about romanticism, and uh, this is obviously not a repetition, because we're talking about a different aspect of romanticism. We're not talking about self-expression. We're not talking about um, nature, even though nature is there in the novel. We're focusing on the power of the imagination and the idea of the sublime. Um, and the sublime is a concept. It's not the dictionary meaning of the word sublime. When I say that something is sublime, it means it's noble and it ends there. So this is the dictionary meaning. This is the first entry in any dictionary when it comes to the word sublime. But obviously, we're talking about a concept that was advanced by a very famous British philosopher. And the sublime is what? It's about finding pleasure in things that are out of proportion. Finding pleasure in a monster, for example. Finding pleasure. Have you ever asked yourself about those people who would go and mount a skyscraper of perhaps 100 stories or floors, and they go on top, and this is the utmost enjoyment and pleasure that they can ever receive, when it is very scary for some. I mean, going to to the third or the fourth floor of a building and looking down would be very. I mean, at least for me, that would be so very scary. But imagine people going to 100 a 100-story building and on top, and they look down and they are so happy. People mounting and climbing mountains, and they go on top of mountains, and it can be very scary for everybody, but they are so elated and so invigorated, and I don't know what else. So this is the sublime, that you find pleasure in otherwise um, unpleasing things, if you like. Are you like this? Do you like to climb mountains and go on top and look down and you feel happy beyond happiness? Are you like this, Joyce?
Yeah, doctor. I have some of these weird stuff on my bucket list, like, bungee jumping and
Mm,
skydiving. So, yeah, I
uh-huh.
think it's about the adrenaline rush. It's all
Uh-huh.
about it. Yes, exactly. But yeah, I
Mm,
think if I stand at the top of a mountain or something, definitely I would be happy and scared at the same time. Definitely.
it's this very weird mix of happiness and scariness, if you like. Very strange mix. This is what they normally refer to as the sense of the sublime. Any other experiences, Rima? How are you with this?
Nope,
Are you?
I am a chicken. I am a chicken. I do
Mm,
not watch horror movies. I hate thrillers.
mm,
I cannot even imagine climbing up or doing going for bungee jumping. Nope. Nope.
mm,
Not happening.
mm.
I'm a chicken. I will accept it. I'm a chicken.
Yeah, most of us are this guy. Who else? The Joyce team and the Rima team. Okay, so obviously you're not either, which is good. I meant to, you're staying on the fence. Okay, so at the core of the novel, we have this sense of the sublime as given by Edmund Burke. Edmund Burke happens to be a very famous British philosopher, and he explored this idea. So, so we're focusing on this emotional intensity, which is often taken to extremes of rapture, nostalgia, horror, melancholy, and sentimentality. So you have all of this in the novel, which would qualify it as a highly romantic piece of work. So closely allied to romanticism would be the idea of the sublime, like I told you, and it's at its simplest definition and meaning. This could be described as a mixture of terror and pleasure. Um, and it is normally inspired by whatever is wild, uncultivated, and dangerous. We're talking about dangerous landscapes here. And Frankenstein, the novel, has lots of that. We have episodes in Frankenstein taking place in such surroundings. Look at the beginning and the ending of the novel. The novel begins and ends in Arctic wastes, while the creature's female companion is made in the remotest of the Orkneys. Obviously, these are mountain heights somewhere. Even the sheer cliffs of Matlock in Derbyshire, as Victor and Cleverell travel northwards through England, that would fill Frankenstein with fear because they recall on a smaller scale the Swiss Alps where so much of the horror has taken place. The bottom line is that you have that. You have mountains and their scary tops. You have very arid terrains, very vast terrains. You have wastes. You have those Arctic wastes. Again, that would also um, have to do with Mary Shelley and her husband, the fact that both of them are highly romantic creatures. They have this in them, and they reflected that in their journals and diaries. And even Shelley wrote a poem called Mont Blanc, uh, um, which we used to do when we read the Romantics, but we're not doing it anymore. Um, so as you can see, there is a great deal of talk about the Swiss Alps and how they look and how immense they are and how overwhelming they are when you look at them, when you go and check them and everything. So where did they get this inspiration from? I mean, I'm talking about Shelley and his wife Mary, and the idea of the sublime, the idea of finding pleasure in otherwise unpleasing things, whether they are unpleasing because of their sheer size or shape, or I don't know. So they took their inspiration from the work of Edmund Burke, He wrote a very famous essay whose title is A Philosophical Inquiry into the Origin of Our Ideas of the Sublime and the Beautiful. And obviously, at its face value, you would think that the sublime and the beautiful mean the same thing, and obviously, no. Whatever is in any sort terrible or is conversant about terrible objects or operates in a manner analogous to terror is a source of the sublime, that it is productive of the strongest emotion which the mind is capable of feeling. So this is how Burke sees it. What he talks about finding pleasure and finding uh, um, enjoyment and delight in whatever is terrible, whatever give you the similitude of terror. Um, and obviously, this is all psychological. Um, and it happens normally when you have those huge terrains, vast terrains, and vast landscapes, which make a tremendous impression on who perceives them. Um, so Burke also goes on and obviously he sums it up by saying that um, when we talk about those sublime sites, I mean, those which are very gigantic and everything, too high and too fast, too obscure, too powerful. You see, too, which means very exaggerated, something that is very powerful beyond power and obscure beyond obscurity and very fast and very high. Um, so what do they do, or what impressions they leave on you? They are hectic, intimidating, and uncontrollable. So you have this heady blend of pleasure and terror. So this is the sublime. What about the beautiful? How do we, what is beauty according to him? He believes that beauty is inspired by the visually regular, the proportioned, and the predictable, right? I think we happen to agree that you find beauty in whatever is symmetrical, whatever is harmonious, whatever is even small. The smaller, the better, if you ask me. And I think if you ask lots of people. So, but the bigger, the, I don't know, I need I need an adjective. So the smaller, the better, the bigger, and I need something that would rhyme with it, but I'll look for something. Um, so it's about this sense of proportion. That's why most of us don't find pleasure in um, things that may seem unpleasant. So unpleasant because we are trained to see them this way. But you would have other people who find it very pleasing. Yeah, let me give you an example of people, for example, deciding to go to Europe for vacation, and people deciding to go to South Asia or Africa, also for enjoyment and for vacation. So, what do people find for the most part? And this is obviously a value judgment that I shouldn't, and a trap that I shouldn't fall into. If I assume that Europe is all honey and milk and very organized, and if I assume that South Asia and Africa are not the best of all possible places. So let's go with the experiment. I'm trying to say, uh, yeah, through no fault of their own, people in South Asia, for example, don't have the means to have a very beautiful, places, but they have their fans, and I happen to be one of them, by the way. You don't know how much I love India, for example. Correspondingly, and along the same lines, you would have people who believe in smallness. They like Europe, they think it's organized. So, um, Europe would be this small thing, and we would refer to it as beautiful. And Africa and the other places would give you the sublime. And of course, it has its fans, um, and its people. Are you getting the point, or am I complicating things, Wallahi?
We get it.
Ah, nice. Okay, so what does this have to do with the novel? You look at the creature, for example. When you look at the creature from afar, he is out of proportion. He doesn't have our regular head. He doesn't have our regular eyes and our regular organs. So you feel scared, right? And sometimes you run away for your life, perhaps. But you still have people who would kind of appreciate this kind of deformity, and they might find him, or they might find sublimity in him. And again, he proves it by learning to speak different languages, by being well versed on, very much versed in poetry and the classics, and very strange kind of thing. So you have both. You have the education and the elevation in his soul and in his demeanor, and you also have his disformity and his disfiguredness. So you have this kind of very strange and very wild mixture, romantic, as it is. This is more on what we're talking about. It's about the effect of the mountains and those scenic places that Frankenstein frequented and went to, and how he imagines them from afar. Again, um, the rocks that he saw, and the sea, and the waves, and the rivers, and the kind of impact that those things have on him. So the effect of this scene on Victor's emotions is profound. And this is what he said. He said, "My heart, which was before sorrowful, now swelled with something like joy." So the view of the wild landscape has the power to move him from sorrow, but his joy obviously does not last. And this is, again, another example, and it points to the whatever is romantic, and the romantic features that we're so familiar with. I'll give you a minute or two to read it, and I would like you to detect the romantic elements and characteristics in it. What is so romantic about the passage? This is my question, and this is what I want you to do. I'll give you a couple of minutes to read it and tell me what is so romantic about it. Okay. Any romantic elements in this part of the novel?
I think Doctor appreciating, sorry, nature, and at the same time the sublime part.
Mm-hmm.
Also solitude, he's alone.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Going alone is very important, and this is part of the psychological makeup of any romantic individual or poet, right? So the idea of going alone, again, the idea of the sublime, like Joyce is saying, and the elements of nature. Remember, this is a natural landscape. We're not in the city, right?
Yes.
Okay, good. I would like you to read this. I'll leave you to read it on your own. This is the discussion itself. So, and it is, of course, based on what we said here. So I would like you to take a minute and read it on your own and see what it is all about. Clear? Should we go on? Yes.
Yes.
Let's move on. Again, um, obviously, talk about nature and the impact it has on people is not limited to Frankenstein. The creature himself has those encounters with nature. Actually, he is a child of nature. He was born in nature, and he had. It is true that he was built in a laboratory, but he had to go out and fend for himself and look for food in nature and acquire the language and deal with people and gets frustrated sometimes, gets happy some other times. So he is also rooted in nature. And here there is talk about how the journey started for the creature when he was abandoned by Frankenstein, and then he had to perhaps think of ways as how he can feed himself, and then how to communicate. He wanted to know and he wanted to communicate with people. That's why he started to acquire the language. It's true that he's not going to use it because nobody would allow him to communicate for fear of, yeah, he was gigantic and everything, but he learned and acquired the language, and he read literature using it. And those are some of those very heartbreaking moments, when the creature comes to consciousness as a newborn baby. with senses of sight, hearing, touch, and smell, but with no language to articulate or describe them. So normally, this is the work of your parents. So you can hear. I'm not sure that kids can, children, not children and babies, they hear, but what kind of noise they hear and whether it's organized noise or not. They can see, they can touch and smell, but they cannot speak. And this is obviously the role of the father or the mother, right? So what happens if you don't have a father or you don't have a parent? I think life would be very difficult for babies, right? And this is the feeling that the creature had. He was he came into the world through no fault of his own. He didn't will it. He didn't decide it. He just came, and he was even pushed to fend for himself from very early on because his creator, his father, decided to run away. So no parental figure to help or protect him. So he started to deal with it, and it had such a negative toll on him, of course, and it was a predicament. Um, Again, you don't have the facility of a language, not yet. Um, you have to feed yourself, and then things develop. So the creature's narrative eloquently evokes his entry into the world as a helpless, oversized adult infant. You see, adult infant is very significant and very poetic. This is what we call oxymoron, where you have two contradictory uh, nouns. When I say I don't remember
Like bittersweet.
oxymoron. Yeah, like bittersweet, for example. I have so many examples, but I don't remember any now. So then, when I say adult infant, obviously, and it's a contradiction of terms. Um, and then we have, um, the creature reflecting on the experience and talking about it. Darkness then came over me and troubled me, but hardly had I felt this when, by opening my eyes, as I now suppose, the light poured in on me again. I walked and I believe descended, but I presently found a great alteration in my sensations. And so on and so forth. Look at Frankenstein and how when he talks about the creature, he uses epithets and items that would alienate everybody from the creature. Obviously, he's defending his case against accusations of irresponsibility and trying to fly away from the responsibility and everything. That's why when he describes the creature, he uses very negative terms. Frankenstein says that the creature he has created is of such unearthly ugliness and that he is almost too horrible for human eyes. And obviously, if he stresses those um, things that would, kind of that are associated with the sense of seeing, he's trying to say that he couldn't stand it. And obviously, when we get to know the creature, we appreciate even his ugliness. Um, we get to know that he is a sensitive, innocent being. um, somebody who finds pleasure um, in abstract things. I mean, he is again romantic and very poetic in all his ugliness. His spirits are elevated by the enchanting appearance of nature. Um, very eloquent, and what he goes through and what he relates is equally very captivating. And then we have again talk about the genres. Remember, this is what we started with. We said um, the novel is not easily classified into clear cut, hard and dry genres. You cannot safely say that this is science fiction or gothic or epistolary. It is all of that. And we add to that the idea of it being a fairy tale. So, what is fairy telic, if you like, about the novel? So, what is so characteristic of a fairy tale? I'm asking you.
Something which is just not possible,
Yeah, out.
like
Yeah,
a talking tree or a talking animal.
yes. It's this idea that you have to suspend your disbelief for, right? So, in order to enjoy it, you need to believe that it is believable, even though it is not very realistic. Um, so this is what we are exactly referring to here. We're referring to the novel as also being uh, a fairy tale. So one additional genre not mentioned there might be helpful when reading this section of the creature's narrative. When he goes and lives close to the Lassie family cottage. Um, and obviously, when we talk about the education that he received, overhearing them, this is where his education comes from. He observes but does not participate in this society in miniature. So he watches the lasses. He learns about relationships, nurture, love, caring for others. He even learns language. He hears key romantic literary texts read out loud and ultimately finds copies of Paradise Lost, Plutarch's Lives, The Sorrows of Young Werther, or I mean, this is German, obviously, excuse my German. So obviously, uh, this is very unrealistic to learn all of that. Remember, this family is a family in a village. You're talking about a family of villagers, okay? And you acquire from them the language. It's not because you practice the language with them, you communicate with them, so you acquire the language. No, you overhear them. And look what happens next. So you learn the language and then you hear literary texts read out. So those are villagers, and some of them, or most of them, or all of them, are uneducated. So it's a little bit exaggerated, right? You think, or perhaps you would think that you are living in a fairy tale where, like Rima said, the impossible happens. Okay, so as you can see here, if you talk about the family, this is a typical family, right? Where you have different family members, and they go about their daily life, and it's business as usual every day. So, what is not realistic is obviously what he has learned from them and what he says he learned from them. So, realism gives way to fairy tale. So, the creature lives in such close proximity to the delasses that this is realistic. But it can be inconceivable and obviously unrealistic that his presence is not discovered. This is something he goes, remember that he is gigantic. So to say that he spent that long time, obviously learning a language and reading the classics would take years, right? Well, so for them not to discover him, obviously, is a little bit, it's a stretch, if you like. So he hunkers down there for over a year, right? So readers and typical, if you're a typical fairy tale reader, you must suspend your disbelief as they would over a fairy tale, as you yourself would, if you're reading a fairy tale of a cottage in a wood inhabited by good and beautiful but impoverished people, while a monstrous giant creeps about the neighborhood doing good deeds in silence and secrecy. A woodland sprite like a benign Puck or Robin Goodfellow. Are you getting the idea?
Yeah, doctor.
Again, yeah. So the idea of having education and learning the language and all and reading the classics obviously is stuff that you only see happening in a fairy tale. Again, there is references to many things in the novel, especially in this association with the tea lasses and how contented and happy they are. Uh, and this is very interesting. And it's about the kinds of feelings that the creature had. He has bouts of self doubt, inspired by the bad treatment of the people that he meets around the village, of course. And this is the conclusion that he came out with. All men, and of course, he means all human beings, all men hate the wretched. And obviously, that the wretched here means the miserable. Il-Ba'is in Arabic. All men hate the wretched. And obviously, he is the wretched. He is the one. He is an outsider. He is always vilified, abused, and turned away whenever he attempts to enter society. He is a misfit, not because he willed it or he decided to be one. It's simply because of society, because of those labels that we are ready to stick to people based on how they look, based on their skin color, their ethnicity and nationality and religion and everything in between. So, as you can see, the creature here is every one of us. Um, you can be bullied based on your nationality, based on your skin color, I'm sorry, religion. So this, and the creature is all of us. Um, so this part is about him hating himself. He has those moments of depression where he has those suicidal thoughts, and it's all because perhaps this is one of the takeaways, and this is one of the messages that Mary Shelley is trying to get across to us. Again, it's all based on, and you would need to set this against what Frankenstein said about the creature. Remember those first encounters with Walton? So it was only Frankenstein and Walton, and obviously Walton listened to what Frankenstein had to say about the whole experience, and like I said, he felt um, some very sympathetic towards uh, Frankenstein, and obviously the rest of the novel, especially this part where the narrative is taken over by the creature and the monster, is meant to challenge the narrative of Frankenstein, which was full of falsehoods about the creature, and also it can come as a lesson that Walton and other people have to learn. They shouldn't be too quick in their judgments, whether in the positive or in the negative. You wouldn't be naive enough to believe somebody um, in either way, whether he is too good or too bad. So you need to, especially if you're judging somebody and you think that he is bad, you would need to give people the benefit of the doubt, obviously. So this is what, or this is what this part is playing. It is meant to challenge the narrative of Victor Frankenstein, and again to teach us a lesson or two about, giving people the chance to explain, share their angle of vision, how they see things, and then at the end, if you have to judge at all, you will be in a better position to make a correct assessment of things and of people. So this is basically what the creature thinks of himself. He was driven to wrongdoing. He didn't mean it. He was very willing to reach out to people to help them. But obviously, because he was ugly in our, or according to our normal standards, he was met with despise, with violence. So the creature is an outsider, vilified, abused, and turned away whenever he attempts to enter society. However innately good he may be, he is driven out on account of his appearance. Obviously, when he arrives in the village, children would shriek and a woman would faint, and the whole village was roused. Some fled, some attacked him until grievously bruised by stones and many other kinds of missile weapons. So again, he is trying to um, get their approval and acceptance. He wants to live. He wants to live and let live, as a matter of fact. But obviously, they wouldn't allow him. Um, and then they start to do stuff that would hurt him. You would have Felix, one of the characters, using supernatural force to tear the creature from his elderly blind father. When he sees them together, he dashes him to the ground and strikes him. Obviously, the creature is very patient. He knows, of course, that he is more powerful, and it would take him perhaps the back of his hand to have this guy to strike this guy dead, but he didn't try to use. So, in spite of his superior strength, the creature does not retaliate. He doesn't take revenge. He would, I promise you, but later. And he has those reflections on what happens. At one point, he would say, "My heart sunk within me as with bitter sickness. I refrained, overcome by pain and anguish." And then we have another confrontation, traveling only at night. And this is what he does. And he knows that if he meets people during daylight, they would attack him, they would feel afraid and scared, and they would try to defend themselves by all and by any means possible. So he travels or he goes out at night. He avoids confrontation, but whenever he deviates, because he means well, he wants to save somebody or something, he gets himself in trouble. In one of those situations, he was kind of saving and rescuing a drowning girl, and obviously he was misunderstood and shot for his good deed. And this is obviously something that he wouldn't tolerate anymore. He finally decides to retaliate and take revenge. He vows eternal hatred and vengeance to all mankind. So we're trying to other him. We're trying to project all the bad things on him, and we're making of him an other, and we start to project and practice all types of bad things. So it's our prejudice, society's prejudice, and fear of the other, of deformity, ugliness, and the unknown that turns an innocent individual, I mean the creature, into a monster. He was not a monster, he was made one, right? So it's again, that would point to society. You're born innocent, right? And it's only society and its indoctrination that would make you who, if you're not aware, and if you're not, your parents are not aware, you can turn into a monster easily. If you get bullied every day, you start to think of ways as how you can retaliate, for example. So there is this stress that society makes us uh, I mean, who we are, obviously, if we're not aware, if we cannot resist, if we have, if we don't have values that we can fall back on, whether it's religion, good upbringing by God bless them, our parents. Um, so what happens? Now he is turned into a monster, and the next thing you know is that child William is murdered as part of his revenge scheme. And it so happened that another innocent individual is being hanged for the crime. Again, I think it's 8 something. Are you tired? I think you are. Would you like us to stop here or go on? We have like 10 more minutes if you think you still have energy. What do you think? Still have time, by the way. Hello?
As you wish,
Yeah,
doctor.
yeah.
What do you think? Should we be consistent and finish, because if we don't finish today, I'm sure I know myself. Next time I'll start all over again. Uh,
Yeah,
let's
let's
Let
finish
finish. Yeah,
after that.
yeah,
yeah, yeah,
yeah.
let's finish. Yeah.
Yeah, let's finish. So again, we're talking about the monster who now lives up to his name, monster. Again, not because he was born a monster. It's simply because he was driven to this monstrosity by society and its different individuals. Uh, Again, this is perhaps a reference to what poverty and deprivation can make of people. So if you're reduced to poverty, or you're born into a hopeless family, and there is obviously no horizons, nothing is looming on the horizon in terms of jobs, education, or anything. So you have this tendency to convince yourself that you have nothing to lose. So why don't I steal, for example? Why don't I become, um, I don't know, a killer, and then they give me money for that? Or perhaps a drug dealer, or so again, there is this idea that poverty, if you're poor through no fault of your own, if you're not given equal opportunity, that can be dangerous. You are driven uh, to very ugly and nasty straits. So Mary Shelley wrote Frankenstein when she was only 18. She was young, but she had seen poverty and deprivation at first hand. Um, Again, you need to remember that this was a time after the French Revolution and what happened. So obviously the French Revolution was a fiasco. It was a disaster, and it left more victims than people could have imagined. So it was very disillusioning. And obviously, um, yeah, people are poor, and then from time to time they go out and express their anger and their frustration. And here, Shelley is referring to just that, to what happens when people are desperate and they obviously have nothing else to lose. So village after village entirely ruined and burned, the white ruins towering in innumerable forms of destruction. The inhabitants were famished. Families once perfectly independent now begged their bread in this wretched country. No provisions, no accommodation, filth, misery, and famine everywhere. So, what kind of future would people and children have? Obviously, they they have no future, and again, that's why you have. I mean, crime is rife in impoverished and poverty-stricken places of all the places. Again, when you have injustice, when you have corruption. So the bottom line would be that uh, sometimes, being a criminal is involuntary. It's something that you don't, it's not in your blood. No, you are born innocent until society and its dictates and its practices uh, turn you into the crime that you will be. Um, so we're talking about political unrest in France, which left people poor and famished. We're talking about rebellion, repression, and war. To begin to see the spurned and neglected creature in Mary's novel as a metaphor for such destitute families. So this is a very powerful metaphor. We're looking at the creature as a representation and as a representative of poor people, neglected, uh, underappreciated people, not only in England, but across the world, not only in the 19th century, but down through the ages. So, this is a very powerful metaphor. You think of the creature as symbolic of all um, the marginalized, the underrepresented, the downtrodden people of the world. And this is what a critic is saying about that. Lee Sternberg argues that the creature is a very philosophical rebel. He explains his actions in traditional Republican terms. He claims he has been driven to rebellion by the failures of the ruling orders. His superiors and protectors have shirked their responsibility towards him, impelling him to insurrection. So he was driven to rebel, he was driven to turn against people, to turn against people as representations of authority, tradition, obsolete ways of looking at the other. So as you can see, the notion of injustice is already well established in the creature's mind at the hands. And who is the first one to victimize him? Obviously, it's his father, creator, uh, um, Frankenstein himself. And then he was then um, brutally treated by society. So the creature has his sympathies for the conquered and disinherited. And we have examples of that in the novel. When he hears, for example, Felix reading to Safi from Volney's Ruins of Empire, and he learns of the discovery of America and the subsequent destruction inflicted on the Native Americans. He wept with Safi over the hapless fate of its original inhabitants, the Red Indians, of course. So we have so many examples which would link the creature to all those downtrodden, all those poverty stricken people who eventually take up arms against authority in its different forms and shapes, whether it's traditions, whether it's religion, whether it's the government, and so on. So, as you can see, Frankenstein, the novel can be read as a depiction of the contemporary situation in Britain in terms of the Luddite uprising. This is also another interesting connection that some critics are linking or associating the creature to the Luddite uprisings. There were rebellions and uprisings between 1811 and 1817 This was, a group of workers, factory workers. They were not obviously happy about their pay, about the level of poverty that they are under, and they decided to go out and express their anger, not in a violent way, I promise you. The next thing you know is that the government forces would open fire at them, killing I don't know how many. Um, and of course, you know, it came down in history. Now everybody knows about the Luddites, and it's now a metaphor. Every time there is a rebellion or a revolution against bad practices and injustices, people are compared to the Luddites. So again, the creature in his retaliation and revenge is also compared to the Luddites, and his revenge bouts, and when he goes out and in order to take revenge, those are compared to the Luddite uprisings. So somebody is summing this up very brilliantly by saying that Frankenstein represents the upper classes and the British government, while the monster or the creature represents the lower or working class, the Luddites. So, just as the government and the upper classes were terrified of a revolution by the working class they had created, Frankenstein is afraid that he will lose everything to the machinations of the monster he has fashioned. The poor laborers and their advocates believed that the government had a duty to listen to its people and to provide the basic necessities to which they have a right, which means food, clothing, shelter, employment, higher wages, lower prices, sympathy, and philanthropy. Like wise Mary Shelley argues that Frankenstein, the creator, has certain responsibilities, and obviously he doesn't live up to them. And it's the monster who tries to seek redress from that. So Frankenstein owes the creature the same basic necessities the government owes its people. He also owes his progeny a name, affection, acceptance, and recognition as a sentient being with rights. Very well said. Um, so again, we're talking about parallels about between the poor and the creature, the Luddites, the creature, the people after the French Revolution, and the creature. So many parallels and correspondence. Yeah, this is more of the same. This is a variation on who the creature is and and but instead of talking about contemporary examples and parallels, we go back in history, not even in history, in mythology. We go as far as Greek mythology, thousands of years back, and we compare the creature to um, Prometheus. And obviously, Prometheus in Greek legend is the one who stole the fire from the gods to give it to human beings, hence the civilization that we enjoy. So, the full title of Mary Shelley's novel is Frankenstein or the Modern Prometheus, which is obviously a reference to a Greek myth. There is this deliberate, um, you know, attention drawing to the celebrated liberator Prometheus, who challenged the authority of the gods and brought fire to mankind. So she challenges readers to explore that comparison and analogy. So Frankenstein thinks that he is this Promethean character. He is the one who created the monster, and he is um, so in one version of the myth, Prometheus is punished for his audacity. Chained to a rock by the god Zeus, each night his liver is eaten by an eagle, only to be regenerated, so the torture is endlessly repeated. So Frankenstein is reenacting that. His punishment may seem less immediately felt, but the novel throughout concerns his suffering and ends with his death. Um, so you wouldn't say that he was a true rebel. You may think of the creature as perhaps more more suitable to play those roles. And there is, of course, there is reference to other classic works like Milton's Paradise Lost. The idea of being in paradise and then you're kicked out of it and stuff like. So the analogies never end. So what happens if I fail to recognize those analogies because I'm not, for example, trained in Greek mythology or English literature to know Milton, to know Homer. Mary Shelley doesn't expect the reader to know all of that. Um, but, but the images are there. And there is talk about them and explanation about them through the encounters and what happened. And, I think we're done. This is all we have. I know that was very exhausting. Sorry for that. But at least we finished it so that we can have time for revision. Um, so, do you have any questions?
We're good.
Nice. Okay. Bye. So, when do you think we can meet for a revision class?
Can
Tomorrow?
we have it tomorrow?
Yeah,
Yes,
that's
please.
fine. Tomorrow at the same time?
Yeah.
Yes, please.
Okay, nice. Bye. On this note and with this item, we'll come to the end of the whole course. Thank you so much, and I'll see you tomorrow, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Bye bye.
Thank you, Doctor.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Professor.
You're welcome. Bye bye.